Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the Warsaw Citadel, a structure built by the Russians in the 1830s and later on used as a prison for political dissidents and fighters of the January uprising of 1863 to 1864. Some of the prisoners held here would later on become prominent figures in Polish politics, while others were executed or sent to Siberia after imprisonment. Today, we will talk to some of the experts about the specifics of the Citadel, the January Uprising, and more history about the era. Our first guest is Michał Cieślak, junior custodian at the Museum of the 10th Pavilion in the Warsaw Citadel. The January Uprising of 1863 to 1864 is the last known uprising of Poland where multiple different factions of different countries were involved in fighting for the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. And can you tell me about what faction have their inputs in it and what are their contributions?
The January Uprising was the last battle of the Polish Commonwealth as we knew it before the partitions, at least symbolically. Poles believed that they were fighting for the unity of the former Poland with strong eastern borderlands. That was supported by the fact that many army units from the areas of what we now know as Ukraine, Lithuania and Belarus fought side by side with the Poles during this uprising. Poles treated participants of the uprising as their own. They were aware of some national differences, but those were not so prevalent at that time yet. There was a very popular saying back then describing the cooperation between Poland and, in this case, Lithuania. Coat of Pachonia next to the eagle, our troops went to the battle unarmed. Pachonia is the historical coat of arms of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania, while the eagle, the white eagle it is on the Polish coat of arms. Some, especially those who lived out east, knew a different version of this saying. In their version, it was an archangel instead of the coat of Pachonia, and as we know it, Saint Michael the Archangel was the patron of Ruthenia, which we now know as Ukraine and Belarus. Unfortunately, this was the last uprising in which Poles stood united, both in the sense of the three-parted lands, as well as because people from other ethnic backgrounds fought on the Polish side. The second half of the 19th century was a period when nationalistic feelings surged. That is also when the Ukrainian national movement was formed, and so, as soon as the Russian Revolution broke out in 1905, there was no possibility of a united battle occurring ever again. Lithuanians wanted to form their own parliament, while the Ukrainians sought to form their own country, located partly in the territory of Poland. Meanwhile, Poles wanted to incorporate Lvov, Vilnius and other former Polish territories into their country.
As I know it, there's also a sizable Jewish minority during the time of the January Uprising. And did they partake in it, or what part or role did they play?
The Jews who lived in the Commonwealth were not a monolithic society. Those who lived in and near Warsaw felt very connected to the idea of Polishness. Even if they were not fully assimilated, they believed that the uprising is their common battle. It is important to mention here the informal leader of Polish Jews, Rabbi Ber Meisels, who led a grand manifestation through the streets of Warsaw. The manifestation was to show support of the Jewish community towards the January Uprising. Jews who lived in the countryside worked as informants. It was unheard of for such informants to betray Poland. That came from the Jews' hatred of Russia. Many Jews fled to Poland from Russia seeking freedom. Unfortunately, anti-Semitism was brewing in the Tsarist Russia all the way through the 19th century. They believed that nothing good can come from that country, so even though they did not take part in the uprising in the military sense, they were of great help in terms of being informants. As I said in the beginning, the Jewish society was not a monolith. Apart from those who lived in Poland for generations before, there was also a surge of Jews coming over from Germany. These Jews, much like the Baltic Germans, were patriotic, but towards the Tsar. They thought that they will be in a better position to make more money by aligning with the stronger side of the conflict, and so those Jews were opponents of the January uprising as it would endanger their interests. By the end of the 19th century, they were the so-called Litwacy, who were Jews fleeing the Russian Empire from further waves of pogroms. That group, unlike those who made the same escape decades prior, barely knew any Polish, and they did not get along with the local Jews. However, they were wealthy, and through the power of their economy they were detrimental to the Polish cause, even if they did not do so intentionally. Also worth mentioning is the fact that in 1903, Józef Piłsudski himself made an address to the Jews living in the Russian partition, in which he said that the Litwacy were sabotaging the work of the Polish Socialist Party by not knowing the ins and outs of conspiracy fighting.
Pracę Polskiej Partii Socjalistycznej przez nieznajomość realiów terenu oraz zasad walki konspiracyjnej.
The alliance known as the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth struggled in unison for the last time in the January uprising against one of the partitioning powers. Dr. Krzysztof Jabłonka will tell us more about the relations between Poles, Lithuanians, Ukrainians and Belarusians during the uprising. The January uprising is the last time in which many different ethnicities of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth band together and fought against the Russian Empire. So in your expert opinion, what is it perceived as today?
Powstaniu styczniowemu towarzyszyła pieśń zwana pobudką.
The January uprising was accompanied by a song named A Wake-Up Call, which was finished in the eastern borderlands. In those territories they would sing about all the coats of arms representing the four main nations of the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. The song went, obok orła znak pogoni, poszła Litwa w bój bez broni, translating to, the Lithuanian coat of Pahonia stands shoulder to shoulder with the Polish eagle, Lithuania went into battle unarmed. Later it goes, the coat of Pahonia also belongs to the Ruthenian, so Belarus initiates the battle. And it ends with, together with the Pahonia, the coat of arms of Saint Michael the Archangel and Ukraine also went to battle. This reflects the four elements of the Commonwealth, the symbol of which was preserved in the Polish Air Force checkerboard. Those four squares are placeholders for the four coats of arms of the Commonwealth: Polish, Ukrainian, Belarusian and Lithuanian. Speaking of Lithuania, until this day celebrate the January uprising as their own, separate event. The only museum devoted solely to the January uprising is located in Lithuania, in the city of Bilevice, where Samogitian peasants fought against the Moscow abuse. Naturally, that did not give them freedom, but until this day, Samogitia is the most patriotic region of Lithuania. Same goes for Belarus, where the Tsar would erect monuments to their heroes, Belarusians erected statues for their insurgents hidden in the forests. They worshipped Konstanty Kalinowski, who was the first one to write to them and spoke their language. Finally, the Ukrainians were the last to start celebrating that anniversary. It is important to note here that Ukrainian youth went to speak with the peasants, delivering a decree called Złota Gramota, or the Golden Book, which said in golden letters that the peasants are now the citizens of a new Ukrainian country as a part of the Commonwealth. Unfortunately, those peasants killed those boys, there were about 15 of them, and they gave over the remaining ones to the Russians. They either died by hanging or in Siberia. That was the understanding of the concept of freedom. Today, all three major Polish uprisings, Kościuszko, November and January, encompasses 7 nations, apart from Poland. Latvia had their share of uprisings, for example in the east of the country, in Latgale. That uprising was led by the Brol-Platter family, one of whom, Tomasz Brol-Platter, was shot by a firing squad in Duneberg, Latgale's main city. Additionally, Poles organized secret clubs in Tartu, Estonia, which led the way for the Estonian freedom groups. Finally, the last daughter of the Commonwealth, Moldova. The Battle of Constantla in June 1863 broke out by surprise, when a group of patriotic Poles burrowed through Turkey and later Moldova to support the insurgents in their homeland. Initially, Moldovan military stopped them in their tracks, but later they made up, and the soldiers would tend to the wounded, all while drinking plenty of wine. They also agreed that they should not enter Russia by force, because then Moldova would be in danger. This leaves us with the last battlefield of the January uprising. The uprising finished beyond Lake Baikal, where 380 exiled men caused an uprising. 4 of them were shot, and the important detail is that each of them came from a different country of the Commonwealth. Ukrainian, he was the leader, Kotkowski was from Poland, Reiner from Belarus, and Celiński from Lithuania. That day, the Commonwealth was shot at the bay of Lake Baikal.
Z Ukrainy przywódca, z Polski Kotkowski, z Białorusi Reiner i z Wileńszczyzny Celiński. Rozstrzelano nam nad brzegami Bajkału Rzeczpospolitą.
The January uprising was one of the most pivotal moments in the era when Poland was partitioned. The Poles would later on spend decades debating whether or not they had taken the correct path of resistance. During the interwar era, the veterans were treated as heroes, and they would later on serve as an inspiration for the soldiers fighting in the 1944 Warsaw Uprising. That's it for today. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.